Okay, let's talk about training for endurance. So let's first define it by talking about the energy systems that are used in endurance work, which is going to be aerobic, right? So that means with oxygen, we're using oxygen and we're using fat as our fuel source. That is opposed to anaerobic, meaning without oxygen, that's using carbohydrates and using creatine phosphate. So you actually are always in an aerobic system, but if you go to a certain intensity, you can also be in the anaerobic system, right? That produces things like lactate, which limits our muscles in different ways than what we're going to talk about today, which is aerobic broken up into two categories: muscular and cardiovascular, right? So the muscular side of things, this is when we think about both of these, by the way, work in conjunction. They're working at the same time. So our muscles have to work appropriately and efficiently, and we also have to work appropriately and efficiently on how well we move gas through our body. So on the muscular side, we just think about it as basically anything over 30 reps. So if it's light enough for you to do more than 30 reps, then you're in the category of things that is muscular endurance. So it could be 30, it could be 300, it could be 3,000. It doesn't really matter. It's light enough for you to move a lot more, okay? What we're trying to improve here is more reps at a given weight, or more contraction time, or even more efficiency at a given load, right? So you can think of if I'm doing bicep curls and I have 10 pounds and I can do 30, then in 3 weeks, hopefully I can add a couple more reps, and then I can do 30 and then 35, right? So I am trying to build my capacity. The same thing for muscular contraction time. If I'm in a plank and I keep working a plank, I don't necessarily get stronger week by week, but if I keep doing this consistently, like maybe 3 times a week, I'm trying to hold for max amount of time for 3 reps, right? Then I, over time, will become more efficient with my muscular contraction, and I can hold for a long period of time, right? And then on the cardiovascular side of things, this is how well we can bring in oxygen, get it around our body, right, through our lungs, into our bloodstream, and disperse through our body, and then also get everything back, have our blood collect a lot of the things that are byproducts and expel that through carbon dioxide. How efficient this is and how efficient this is really determines how long you can go or how fast you can go at a set pace, right? So now let's talk about the specific things that you would want to do when building workouts and workout programs to improve your endurance. Okay, if we're trying to build a program to help us improve our endurance, then basically what we're trying to do is 2 things. The first one is increase the intensity that we can go up to, and then the second one is increase the duration of work, or the capacity that we have, right? So let's talk about that first one, that increasing our intensity. First, we'll just define it as trying to increase our VO2 max. VO2 max is a term that basically just means how much I can exchange gases, like the max amount that my heart can beat, my lungs can breathe, to make sure I'm getting oxygen in and expelling CO2. What's the max capacity that I have? Really easy to figure that out. It's just start walking, slowly increase your pace about every minute or so, and then at a certain point you would go so hard that you could not breathe and you would have to stop. That is your VO2 max, right? So we can increase this through getting near VO2 max and then recovering, getting near VO2 max and recovering. We call this high intensity interval training. So you can see on our graph here, we're working up to about our VO2 max and then recovering back down to where we can start breathing again. And then we do that multiple intervals. Okay, so we're looking for more than 30 seconds of work, really. So it could be 30 seconds, it could be 3 minutes, it could be 30 minutes, right? But all we're looking to do is have some sort of interval of working near that 80 to 90 to 100% of VO2 max. Then for a work to rest ratio, we're looking for work being 1 and then rest being 1 to 0.5. Meaning if I work for 2 minutes, then I would rest for 2 minutes down to 1 minute, right? So that's kind of the ratio that we're trying to keep in. And then if you look on our graph, this is what it would look like. So I'm working up to a certain point and then resting, working up to a certain point and then resting. And I'll show you what that workout would look like a little bit later, but let's now go on to our duration. So how can we increase the time that we work or the capacity that we have for work at a low level? Okay, so this little line is lactate threshold. This is where we cross over and start using different things for fuel other than oxygen and fat. And this is in our anaerobic threshold. So we start using carbohydrates or creatine stored in our muscle, which starts to produce lactate, which is that stuff that burns in your muscle, right? So if we can stay underneath our lactate threshold, then we can go for basically as long as we have oxygen and fat. Now, obviously, we're going to start to find other things that's going to limit our capacity before we run out of oxygen and fat, like our connective tissue or just the muscle itself. Is it just can't contract anymore, right? So we start to find other things that are a limiting factor. And if we're going to increase our capacity, we need to get to those things and work long enough to where we're finding those limiting factors, and then we need to start improving those, okay? Your cardiovascular system will be improved over time, but usually it's actually our connective tissue and our musculoskeletal system that'll hold us back at that level, right? So this, we're thinking of just really long, slow distance. You wanna be at a conversational pace. So I spent about $35,000 to figure out how to test for lactate threshold and VO2 max and all these fancy things with fancy machines, but I'll save you the $35,000 and say lactate threshold can be really figured out if you're just doing the talk test, which is, can I hold a conversation? If I couldn't hold a conversation, maybe I'm taking a couple breaths in between, but if I have to start taking big, deep breaths and I couldn't talk to you fluidly, then you're past your lactate threshold. You're welcome, you just saved $35,000. Okay, so we're looking to be conversational, and then we're just building the capacity and the duration. We're trying to find the things that limit us from doing that, okay? So this is how the workouts would look. So if I want to do some high intensity interval training, this is a really simple workout, but I guarantee you it would help. It's going to be 4 rounds of 400-meter run. I'm going to do that fast enough to get near that VO2 max to where I feel like I can't breathe anymore. And then I'm going to let myself recover for about half the time that I'm working. And I'm going to repeat that as many times as possible. You will have diminishing returns, okay? The shorter you reduce your rest time, you won't be able to go as hard the next interval, okay? So just understand that. But if I just do that 3 times a week and I'm slowly making it harder in some way, then I will increase my VO2 max and I'll increase the intensity I can work, okay? On the capacity side, it would just be something like bike for 60 minutes at a moderate pace to where you could have a conversation. You're gonna start to feel these things like, if you aren't accustomed to the bike, you might be a little bit saddle sore, or your connective tissue, your joints will start to hurt, your muscles are gonna start to talk to you. Those things you're gonna start to find out what is your limiting factor on your capacity. And then if you keep pushing the duration or the distance that you're going, then you will start to improve those things slowly, okay? So if I was gonna build out a week, this is kind of what it would look like. I would start off with 2 days of high intensity training, then I'd go for my long duration, then I'd take a rest, and then go into high intensity, long duration, and then a rest. So there's my 7 days. I'm getting 5 days of work in here, which seems to be like 5 to 6 days is kind of the sweet spot. And then I am giving myself enough time to recover from the stimulus that I gave myself, okay? So why I put the high intensity first is because that is gonna be a little bit more taxing on your general system, right? So it's gonna put more pressure on your connective tissue. It's going to do a little bit more damage to your muscles, and it's better to do that when you're fresh. And then you can do the long duration stuff even when you're sore and a little tired. You can still hop on a bike and go at a moderate pace for a pretty long time. And then getting yourself enough rest is really important. Don't forget to rest. and recover. That's the time where you're actually getting better. This, remember, gives us the stimulus or breaks the system, and then this is the fix. Don't forget to fix what's broken. Okay, so if I was going to extrapolate that out into months of training or a mesocycle, then it would just basically be over weeks, I would try to increase how difficult each of these things are. So my HIIT training, maybe I go for 500 meters the next week, or maybe I decrease the rest time to 45 seconds. Or maybe I increase my pace, and instead of going at a 2-minute pace, I go at a 1:45 pace. So there's a lot of different ways that I can make this harder, but really at the end of the day, I'm just trying to make it a little bit harder each week. And then the same thing for my capacity is I'm just trying to go a little bit longer or a little bit farther every single time. Don't try to go a lot farther because that's how you get injured. Start slow and build yourself really long. And if you can start off at working like an hour and then you can slowly build that over weeks and months to working for 2 hours, then you've increased your capacity by 100%, right? So this is how I would build out a program and what I'm thinking about when I'm building out a program for our endurance.